Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I want you to imagine something for a moment. It's late at night. The lights are dim, the air is warm, and you're lying next to someone you desire, not just physically but deeply. There's a pulse in the room, an unspoken language that flows between you. You're not thinking about performance. You're not thinking about what's right or wrong. You're simply there in the delicious tension of connection. Now, here's a truth that many don't say out loud. Women often crave intimacy in ways that go beyond the ordinary. And yes, sometimes that means the kind of closeness that comes with the 69 position, not for the obvious reasons, but for the emotional, sensual, and deeply psychological layers underneath. You see, it's not just about physical pleasure. It's about vulnerability. It's about equality. It's about the rare moment where giving and receiving happen at the exact same time, where two bodies move in harmony, and there's no leader and no follower. It's a dance without a conductor. And that, my friends, is intoxicating. So today we're going to talk about why women secretly desire this position, not just in the bedroom, but as an expression of something much bigger. Trust, intimacy, and the thrill of being completely seen. There are conversations we have in whispers, the kind that slip between words, that linger in the pauses. Conversations that are less about what we say and more about what we dare to reveal. And tonight, because this isn't just a topic, it's an invitation, we are going to lean into one of those whispered conversations. Why would a woman, especially a woman in her 30s, 40s, or beyond, secretly want the 69 position? Now, I'm not talking about the surface level explanation, the kind that fits in a quick joke or a magazine headline. I'm talking about the emotional architecture behind it, because if you think this is only about anatomy, you've missed the entire symphony. Let me take you into a truth that is rarely spoken for many women. This position isn't just erotic, it's symbolic. It's a mirror. Two people face to face in the most unguarded way, both giving and receiving in real time. It's an equal exchange of attention and devotion. And in a world where women are so often taught to give more than they receive, this symmetry is not just arousing, it's revolutionary. Think about it. Most of the time, intimacy is sequential. One person gives, the other receives. The energy flows in one direction. But here, it's reciprocal. There's a rhythm, a balance, a harmony that can't be replicated in many other experiences. It says, I see you, I feel you, and I'm with you every single second of this. Now, here's the thing about women, especially women who have lived long enough to know themselves. Their desire is not just about sensation. It's about context. It's about what's happening emotionally in that moment. It's about the mental soundtrack playing in her head when she feels your body moving with hers. For her, the 69 position can become a metaphor for the kind of relationship she craves: mutuality, attentiveness, and an unspoken commitment to pleasure on both sides. And that's why, when it's done with care and presence, it can unlock something far deeper than physical release. I've spoken to countless women who say that what makes it so intoxicating is not just the pleasure itself, but the way it blurs the line between giving and receiving. It's like standing in the rain and the sun at the same time. You don't know whether you're warmed or cooled. You just know you're alive. That aliveness, that shared vulnerability, is what keeps it lingering in the back of her mind. And here's another layer. For many women, this position is an act of trust. You see, pleasure requires safety. Not safety in the physical sense alone, but safety to let go, to surrender, to be seen without pretense. When she allows herself to be this exposed, physically and emotionally, it means she believes you can hold that space for her without judgment. But trust is not built in the moment you're already there. Trust is cultivated in the days, the weeks, the months before, in the way you listen to her when she talks about her day, in the way you respect her boundaries outside the bedroom, in the way you look at her, not just when she's dressed to impress, but when she's in her most unglamorous, unfiltered state. So if you think this position starts in the bedroom, you're already too late. For her, it starts in the little things. When you remember her favorite coffee order, when you send her that text just to say you were thinking of her, when you touch her lower back as you pass in the kitchen. All of that builds the invisible bridge that makes her want to meet you in this space of equal vulnerability. And let's not pretend that this is always easy. The truth is, many couples shy away from it because it can feel awkward. Because to be that close, to have no hiding place, is not something we're used to in a culture that thrives on filters and distance. But here's where the magic lies: in the awkwardness, in the unpolished, in the moments where you both surrender to being perfectly imperfect together. I once heard a woman describe it as falling into a loop of pleasure. She said, it's like my mind can't figure out where the giving ends and the receiving begins, and in that confusion, I lose myself. And maybe that's the point. Maybe what we're really searching for in intimacy isn't control. It's losing ourselves for just long enough to remember that we're not separate at all. And that's the first thing most men miss. They think women desire the act itself. But more often, what she desires is the feeling it represents, the feeling of being met fully, matched in intensity, given as much as she gives. When you can embody that, not just physically, but emotionally, you'll notice the way her body softens with you, the way her breath syncs with yours, the way she stops holding back. This is why the details matter: the pace, The presence, the willingness to linger, because in this position, speed is not your friend. Attention is. Every touch, every movement is a silent question. Can you feel me as much as I feel you? And when the answer is yes, you've just entered a level of intimacy most couples never reach. Now, the deeper we go into this conversation, the more you realize it's not just about technique. It's about an energy exchange. And for a woman, especially one who knows her body and her mind, that exchange is what makes it unforgettable. You see, when we talk about desire, we often think about it as something that begins in the body. But for most women, it begins in the mind. The body is the stage, but the mind is the playwright, the director, and the critic all at once. This is where so many men miss the mark. They focus on technique without understanding the script that's playing inside her head. And in the 69 position, this script is unique because her mind is juggling the sensations of giving and receiving in the same moment. That duality, when done right, becomes a kind of erotic loop. It's like a song that builds and builds without ever resolving, pulling her into a trance where she can't and doesn't want to find the exit. But here's the nuance: for a woman to enjoy this, she must feel free from performance pressure. If she feels she has to look perfect, or worry about how she appears, or manage your pleasure as a responsibility rather than a shared joy, the moment collapses. This is why emotional safety and attunement are so essential. She wants to feel that you're as invested in her pleasure as you are in your own, not as a duty, but as a desire. And this is where the beauty of reciprocity comes in. In many forms of intimacy, there's a giver and a receiver. One is in the active role, the other in the passive. But here, both are active and passive at the same time. This symmetry communicates something powerful. I am with you, not above you. I am not performing for you, and you are not performing for me. We are co-creating this. This co-creation is one of the most intoxicating aspects for women, especially those who, in other parts of life, are expected to carry the mental and emotional load. When you give her an experience where she can both give and receive without overthinking, you're offering her a rare space of equality and surrender. Now, let's talk about arousal. For many women, mental arousal precedes physical arousal. That means she can be touched in all the right ways, but unless her mind is engaged, she won't feel it fully. And here's the secret. The 69 position can be one of the most mentally engaging experiences because it requires her to stay present. She's feeling, she's tasting, she's hearing your breath, she's sensing the micro shifts in your body, all while her own body is responding to your touch. It's a sensory overload in the best possible way. I've heard women describe it as being caught between two pleasures. One said to me, it's like I can't decide which sensation to focus on, so I give up trying, and then I'm just floating in both. That surrender is not something she reaches every day. It's something that happens when her mind stops controlling and starts experiencing. But here's the challenge for her to let go in this way. You have to lead with presence. Presence is not about doing more. It's about being more. It's the difference between touching her body and actually feeling her body in your hands. It's the difference between moving in rhythm and moving with attunement to her breath, her sighs, her subtle shifts. And presence requires that you slow down. Too often, men rush through intimacy as if they're on a countdown. But if you want her to sink into this position fully, you must stretch time. Hold moments longer than you think you should. Pause when she least expects it. Let her feel the weight of your attention. This slowing down is not just about physical pacing. It's also about creating psychological space. In the stillness, her mind starts to wander into the erotic. She notices the heat of your skin, the scent of your body, the way your breath changes when you're lost in her. These details become the architecture of her desire. And here's something I want men to really understand. When a woman says she wants to feel connected, she doesn't mean just emotionally. She means physically connected in a way that dissolves the gap between you. The 69 position, when entered into with this level of attunement, collapses the hierarchy of giver and receiver and puts you both on the same plane. It's a moment where you're not above her, not below her, you're alongside her. That equality is magnetic. Now, there's also a playful dimension here that shouldn't be underestimated. Sexuality isn't just about intensity, it's about curiosity, exploration, and play. This position can carry a certain playfulness because it's unconventional, because it's intimate in a visually vulnerable way, and because it invites a certain spontaneity. And for many women, especially in long-term relationships, playfulness is the missing ingredient that reignites desire. When you approach it not as a performance but as an exploration, you open the door to laughter, to experimentation, to those messy moments where you both smile mid-act because something unexpected happened. And believe me, those moments don't kill the mood, they deepen it. They remind her that intimacy is not fragile, it can hold humor and pleasure at the same time. There's also a layer of empowerment here. In most cultural narratives, women are positioned as the object of desire, not the subject. In the 69 position, she becomes both. She is giving and receiving. She is active and receptive. She is in control of her pleasure even as she is immersed in yours. That dual role can be deeply affirming for her sense of sexual agency. But I want to be clear, this empowerment only emerges when the dynamic is grounded in mutual respect. If she feels pressured into it, or if it's approached purely for novelty without emotional attunement, it loses its magic. This isn't about checking off a list of things to try. It's about creating a space where both of you feel safe enough to step into the unfamiliar, the vulnerable, and the deeply present. So yes, it's about physical pleasure, but it's also about emotional resonance, about shared presence, about equality, about the mind-body connection that makes intimacy more than just friction and release. You know, intimacy is never just about bodies. It's about the stories we tell ourselves when we're with another person. It's about the silent agreements we make, the unspoken boundaries we test, the emotional contracts we sign without words. And in this sense, every intimate act becomes a mirror, reflecting back not just desire, but the state of the relationship itself. The 69 position, perhaps more than most, has this uncanny ability to reveal where a couple really is. Because it demands reciprocity, it exposes imbalance. If one partner is only half present, the other feels it instantly. If there is mistrust lingering beneath the surface, it shows in hesitation. If there is emotional distance, the act becomes mechanical instead of electric. But when there is trust, real trust, it transforms. It becomes a physical manifestation of, I am here with you fully. This is why so many women, even if they don't speak it openly, are drawn to it. Because in that moment, there is no hiding. You're in her space, she's in yours. Every breath, every twitch, every shiver is shared. And trust is not built overnight. Many women carry wounds, moments in their past where intimacy felt unsafe, where vulnerability was met with judgment, where openness was punished instead of cherished. In those cases, positions that require this level of mutual exposure can feel terrifying. But here's the beauty. They can also be healing. When a woman allows herself to be in this position with you, she's not just saying, I want to feel good. She's saying, I trust you not to use my vulnerability against me. She's saying, I believe you will hold me in this moment, not harm me. That's no small thing. And if you meet her there with the same level of care, you can create a moment that rewrites the scripts of her past. I've had women tell me, I never realized how much of my intimacy was guarded until I found myself letting go in this way. And that's because the reciprocity of the act gently dismantles the roles we've been conditioned to play. Instead of one person being the center of attention while the other fades into the background, you both occupy the center. Instead of one person being the caretaker and the other the receiver, you both become caretakers. And when this balance is reached, something subtle happens. It spills over into other parts of the relationship. Outside the bedroom, you find yourselves listening more, interrupting less. You take turns in conversations instead of competing for airtime. You notice each other's needs more quickly because you've trained yourselves to be attuned in a space where it mattered most. Now, let's talk about the long-term impact. Desire in long relationships doesn't disappear because the body stops working. It fades because the couple stops cultivating curiosity. They stop exploring. They let comfort replace discovery. And that's when intimacy becomes predictable, safe in a way that's dull rather than nourishing. The 69 position, when approached with care, can disrupt that pattern. It demands attention, coordination, playfulness, and vulnerability all at once. It invites the kind of erotic risk that can reignite the spark in relationships that have slipped into autopilot. It says, let's do something where we both have to be fully here right now. For women especially, that shared focus can be intoxicating. It's a reminder that intimacy is not a one-way street, and that pleasure doesn't have to be linear. It can be circular, looping endlessly between two bodies until you forget where it started. But here's the key. This isn't about introducing novelty for novelty's sake. If you treat it as a stunt, it will feel like one. The real transformation happens when you approach it with the same reverence you would give to something sacred. You pay attention, you slow down, you allow pauses, you notice the way her breathing changes. You let her feel you listening with your body, and this is where the metaphor deepens. Because if you can learn to be that attuned in the most intimate moments, you can bring that same attunement to your daily life. You can become the partner who notices her micro expressions when she's upset, who hears the fatigue in her voice even when she says she's fine, who understands that intimacy is as much about empathy as it is about touch. I often tell couples the bedroom is not separate from the rest of the relationship. It's a reflection of it. The way you approach each other in intimacy is often the way you approach each other in conflict, in joy, in boredom, in celebration. And so when you create equality, reciprocity, and presence in your sexual connection, you're not just improving your sex life, you're rewiring the way you relate to each other everywhere else. And for many women, this is the deepest draw. It's not just about what happens between the sheets. It's about knowing that you see her, that you meet her where she is, that you are willing to give as much as you take. That knowledge makes her feel safe enough to explore, to play, to surrender. It's also why some women won't tell you they want this. They might fear being judged, or they may have internalized the belief that asking for pleasure is selfish. So instead, they wait for you to create the conditions where it feels natural, inevitable, and free from shame. And when you do, you'll see a side of her that might surprise you, not because it wasn't there before, but because it was waiting for the right moment to emerge. There is a difference between sex as an act and sex as an art. One is mechanical, you follow a pattern, you move toward an expected end. The other is fluid, like painting in the dark, guided only by touch, by sound, by breath. The 69 position, when it becomes art, is no longer about how it's done, it's about the way it's done. For women, this way is everything. It's the difference between a fleeting moment and a memory that lingers for days. Because here's the truth, women rarely remember just what you did, they remember how it made them feel. And in a position that requires such reciprocity, the way you make her feel becomes the entire story. Let's start with pacing. Most men think intensity means speed, but in reality intensity is created through contrast, through the interplay of slow and fast, stillness and movement, anticipation and release. The most intoxicating rhythm is one that surprises her, one that keeps her body guessing while her mind stays anchored in the present. When you pause unexpectedly, when you slow down just as she's leaning into more, you create a delicious frustration that heightens her awareness of every touch. And then there's presence. In this position, your presence is not just physical, it's sensory. She can feel when you're distracted, when you're rushing, when your mind is already ahead of the moment. But she can also feel when you're right there with her, when your focus is not split between performance and pleasure, but fully invested in the shared experience. Eye contact, though challenging in this position, is one of the most intimate cues you can offer. Even brief glances, meeting her gaze for a heartbeat, can send a wave of connection through her body. It's the unspoken message, I'm here with you. I see you. And that look, even if fleeting, can anchor her deeper into trust and arousal. Body language matters just as much. The way you hold her supportive, secure, without restraining, tells her how safe she is in this space. The gentle weight of your hand, the way you adjust to her movements, the micro responses you give to her reactions. These are the silent love letters you write on her skin. And here's something that often goes unnoticed, say breathing. Breath is one of the most primal, instinctive ways to sync with another person. When your breathing falls into rhythm with hers, her body relaxes into the moment. When she hears you inhale sharply in pleasure, she feels desired. When she hears you exhale slowly, she knows you're savoring her. This creates a feedback loop. Your pleasure feeds hers and hers feeds yours until you're not sure whose is whose. Touch is the language, but attention is the translator. You can touch her in 100 ways, but if you're not listening with your hands, you'll miss the most important cues. Pay attention to how her muscles tense or relax, how her hips shift toward or away from you, how her sounds change with different movements. These are the breadcrumbs she leaves you. Follow them, and you'll never be lost. One of the greatest mistakes is assuming that more stimulation automatically means more pleasure. In truth, the mind needs space to process sensation. Sometimes slowing down, softening your touch, even pulling back entirely, creates an edge that makes the next touch almost unbearable, in the best way. This is the art of pacing, of not giving everything at once, of letting her long for what's coming next. This position also offers an opportunity for playfulness that is often underestimated. You can experiment with pressure, with teasing, with moments where you both pause just to laugh, to breathe, to feel the absurd beauty of being disentangled together. Those moments of levity are not interruptions, they are connectors. They remind her that you can hold both intensity and lightness in the same space, which makes her feel safe enough to let the moment unfold without fear of ruining it. And of course, communication, verbal and non-verbal, is the thread that holds it all together. A whispered word, a soft moan, a subtle squeeze of her thigh. These are not just expressions of pleasure, they are confirmations that you're tuned into each other. The best lovers are not those who guess perfectly, but those who pay attention and adjust in real time. For women, especially those who have been in relationships where their pleasure was secondary, this kind of attunement can be profoundly moving. It's not just that you're giving her pleasure, it's that you're showing her that her pleasure matters as much as yours. And when she believes that, she'll meet you with a level of openness and enthusiasm that no technique alone can create. This is where the artistry becomes transformative. It's no longer about doing the 69 position, it's about inhabiting it together. Every movement becomes an extension of the last, every reaction feeds the next, until it feels less like an act and more like a current you're both being carried by. And here's the most beautiful part: when you treat intimacy as an art, you begin to realize that there's no final goal. Yes, There may be climaxes, but they're not the point. They're simply peaks on a landscape you're exploring together. The real satisfaction comes from the journey, from the moments in between, from the shared rhythm you create without words. And when the experience ends, what stays with her is not the memory of technique, but the memory of how deeply she felt connected to you, how seen, how desired, how equally matched she was in giving and receiving. That's what lingers. That's what makes her think of you days later with a softness in her smile. By now, you've probably realized something. This conversation was never just about a position. It was about a philosophy of intimacy. Because the truth is, positions are just choreography. What gives them life is the meaning we breathe into them. The 69 position in its rawest form is a metaphor for what a thriving relationship looks like. Two people showing up fully, both giving and receiving, both trusting and surrendering, both being the subject and the object of desire. It's the physical embodiment of reciprocity, and in that way it challenges every one-sided dynamic we've been taught to accept. For women especially, this reciprocity can be revolutionary. In so many parts of life, they are asked to give without asking for much in return. They are expected to nurture, to care, to accommodate. And too often, that expectation seeps into intimacy. But here, in this position, there is no room for imbalance. If one partner withdraws, the connection falters. If one dominates without listening, the harmony breaks. It's a dance that requires mutual presence. And that's why, when done right, it leaves such a profound mark. I want you to think about the relationships you've seen, your own, your friends, maybe your parents. How many of them have mastered this art of equal exchange, not just in bed, but in everyday life? How many have learned to hold each other with as much generosity as they receive? That's the real challenge, and that's why conversations like this matter, because the way you touch each other in the bedroom is a rehearsal for the way you'll hold each other in the harder moments. When you learn to match her rhythm, to read her cues, to let your pleasure be shaped by hers, you're learning the same skills you'll need when she's tired, when she's hurt, when she feels unseen. You're learning how to be with her instead of above her. And this is the secret most people don't tell you. Sexual connection is never separate from emotional connection. You cannot have one without the other and expect it to be fulfilling. Yes, you can have physical release, but deep satisfaction, that glow that lingers, is born from feeling connected, respected, and understood. So, why do women secretly want the 69 position? Because it is one of the rare moments where all those elements converge. It's playful but intimate, vulnerable but equal, erotic but deeply human. It allows her to be in control and surrendered at the same time. It shows her that you're willing to meet her in the middle, that you value her experience as much as your own. But here's where it becomes transformative. When you take that same spirit and carry it beyond the bedroom, when you start listening to her with the same focus you give in those moments, when you match her effort in the relationship the way you match her movements in that shared rhythm, when you allow pleasure, whether sexual, emotional, or everyday, to be something you create together, not something one gives and the other receives. Because intimacy is not a performance. It's not a checklist of things to try. It's not about being perfect or impressive. It's about showing up in all your imperfection, meeting each other in the middle, and saying without words, I'm here, I'm with you. Let's create something together. And maybe that's why, for the women who've experienced it in this way, the 69 position isn't just a physical act, it's a reminder that when two people choose to be fully present for each other, magic happens. That when they drop the scripts and stop playing roles, they can meet each other in the raw, unscripted space where desire lives. I want you to hold on to that. Not because I'm suggesting that every intimate moment should look like this, but because it's a perfect example of what intimacy at its best can be, a loop of giving and receiving that never has to end. So, if you take anything from this conversation, let it be this: focus less on what you do to her and more on what you experience with her. Build the trust that lets her surrender. Match the generosity you hope to receive. Be curious enough to keep exploring. And remember that, in the end, the moments that stay with her won't be about technique. They'll be about the feeling of being met completely, without hesitation, without hierarchy, without fear. That's what she'll think about later. That's what will make her smile to herself when she's alone. That's what will make her look at you differently, touch you differently, love you differently. And if you can give her that, if you can be that partner, then the question of why women secretly want anything at all becomes irrelevant, because she won't have to want it in secret anymore. She'll trust you enough to tell you. And that, my friends, is the real win. So here's to creating intimacy that's equal, passionate, playful, and endlessly reciprocal. Here's to meeting each other in the middle, in every sense of the word. And here's to remembering that the art of connection, like the art of love, isn't about perfection. It's about presence. If this conversation resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your experiences in the comments, because these are the dialogues that change how we love, how we touch, and how we see each other. If you haven't yet, subscribe so we can keep exploring these truths together. And until next time, be present, be generous, and never stop meeting each other halfway.